All that we do at businessofcannabis.com. Coming up on this BofC Live, we connect with Valda Coryat. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of Trulieve, talking about the brand portfolio they are launching, as well as the ever-growing footprint of Trulieve across the United States. Enjoy this conversation with Valda Coryat. Valda, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you because we of course are always following what Trulieve does, and we saw this come across our desk. We want to talk about the brands you guys have launched. Tell us a bit beforehand, for those that have been, I don't know, living underground for a bit. Tell us a little bit about Trulieve, the footprint you have now, the growing footprint you have in terms of the business overall.
Sure. So Trulieve is a leading multi-state operator, as we call it, MSO, right? Certainly we started in Florida, but we quickly expanded to California and Connecticut. We are now in 6 states. We have about 96 stores nationwide, and about a 2.2 million square foot cultivation footprint. We produce nearly a ton, literally a ton, not figuratively, of flower weekly. We have over 500 SKUs and about 7,000 employees. So definitely no longer small.
No, sort of a leader in the MSO gang, if you will. Talk a bit about sort of that expansion, because I live in Toronto, I'm in Boston right now, but that expansion, I mean, even the footprint in terms of numbers of retail stores of 96, I think you said, would be on the Canadian landscape, the biggest player in Canada in terms of retail. Talk a little bit about that sort of growth and scale and that sort of time horizon, because that type of growth is just unbelievable.
It is. It is. Trulieve is about 5 years old, right? So if you think about 5 years, wow, starting with just one dispensary, and now, as I mentioned, to 96. But we're also, of course, we have bigger ambitions. We have a hub model, right? So we look at 5 hubs nationwide. We certainly have Florida as our southeast hub anchor. Now that we are also in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, that's our Northeast hub. And then, of course, we have a little something on the horizon with Harvest.
We may have heard about something like that.
Yeah, I think so. That, if all goes well, will give us a really strong anchor in the Southwest. So 3 out of the 5 hubs.
It's a pretty good run. And
Mhm.
it always strikes me when people say, 5 years, it seems like in the cannabis world, that seems like forever. But I think when we write the history of cannabis, like some business student in, 10 years time, that first 5 years will be like, well, unbelievable to write about, but also everybody is in some form of startup and growth mode.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, we definitely believe that 1 + 1 is greater than 2, right? So again, all things go well. We really are looking at a stronger overall company.
Hmm.
And, certainly that would expand us to 11 states, and get us to about 126 stores. So, and grow that cultivation from 2.2 million up to about 3 million.
Yeah.
We're really excited about it, but of course, we know that there's a lot of work to do in our current states, and look forward to partnering with a stronger and bigger team.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, because what came across our desk was about the brand portfolio, sort of
Mhm.
expansion and launching. Talk a little bit about that, but especially in the context of the consumers you're going to be reaching, and maybe the insights upon which you're drawing to actually create the products that bring to market and attract customers in and retain them.
Yeah, so when we started in Florida, it was just a medical market, right? So you really, and at the time that we started, flour wasn't even a part of it. So you're talking about your tinctures, your capsules, your topicals, things that I think are a lot closer to more, I would say, traditional medicine forms, right? Your pharma or your OTC type products. And then, of course, as the market has evolved across many states, we realize, what? Yes, there's always a need from a medicinal standpoint, but more and more people have joined. So whether they come in as patients or on the adult use side, we're finding a spectrum of people in terms of their experience level, their needs, their lifestyles, generationally, right, where they sit. Really interesting. While millennials are certainly a key driver of cannabis growth, we're also seeing growth in the 60 plus, right? So, you think about where people are in terms of their life stage. And, there's a great opportunity, I think, to make shoppability easier for them as we and others continue to provide a greater and broader spectrum of products available to them.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you sort of described it, the different, because it is, of course, serving consumers who are already there. It's
Hmm.
also, I mean, I think sort of about Florida, it's like there are also consumers who are going to be either new for the first time or more likely returning to cannabis in its sort of new
Absolutely.
form, and like how to welcome. It's an interesting like marketing strategy challenge. Like,
Hmm.
what do these what are they there for? What are they thinking about? And within that, I think it's like we often think about like there's a rec market and a medical market,
Yeah, it's so
but there's
different.
really most people are somewhere, I guess, in between there. Like the broad term is like wellness or health. Like, is that how you're sort of thinking about brand positioning as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's different need states, right? So, with those original products, in a medicinal market, you probably are looking at more wellness, right? I like to describe to people who may not be as cannabis involved. You take a daily vitamin every day, probably add some supplements. CBD capsules would be great, right? We're learning a lot about minor cannabinoids that are helpful with everything from inflammation to just really fine tuning your endocannabinoid system. Then you've got, I'm a mom, right? So you've got these folks who I don't know, maybe they need help with sleep, right? You're multitasking and so forth. Well, again, I'm going to mention another minor one, but CBN, right? And we have that in different forms, including in gummies. So when you think about edibles, for example, as a product form, particularly gummies or chocolate, you have both a need state that maybe is a little bit of a guilty pleasure, right? On the one hand, and but then there's also people that are looking for discretion, right? So they certainly have bought into cannabis, but they're not necessarily, say, as loud and proud as somebody who's a canna connoisseur. The consumer that you mentioned who um, maybe used it in the 70s, right? And kind of, there was a lull for a moment and then they come back and I don't know, they're cool again or it's cool again. So, they're outwardly using it and absolutely love flower, right? There's something really unique to that flower experience. Um, some people are looking for inspiration. You know, One of the brands that I'm sure we'll get to, but that we're launching that I'm excited about is Muse, right? When you think about cannabis as your muse, really fascinating just conceptually. But even just from a reality of cannabis, my family's from the Caribbean, right? And so it's certainly something that I grew up knowing about. But one of the first things I think about when I think about cannabis are music artists, right? Or artists in general. And so the idea of a brand called Muse that inspires you, right, to do things creatively and so forth, just fits, right? When you think about, maybe that me moment, right? Again, I mentioned that guilty pleasure. So those need states are very real. I think there's, certainly sort of your everyday routine consumption, but then there are moments outside of the routine that you may be looking for something, maybe that you don't consume every day. And that's where, again, these brands, as we continue to evolve the portfolio, really come in.
Yeah, and the nice part is, from a Truly perspective, is that with the footprint of actually direct to consumer, right? The sort of
Mhm.
96 stores, there must be direct loop feedback to the brands you're launching, and that how they're being received in store from a like anecdotal level, but also from
Mhm.
a SKU level at sort of POS and understanding what people are buying, why. Like how does that feedback loop within Trulieve sort of inform what you're doing, in real time?
Yeah, and I guess I'll add, we do use a daily feedback loop, right? And that is everything from our customer service team that's out there, our store associates, but also our social media team that's actively listening. But for development of the brands and our brand architecture, we also conducted primary research. So there's a combination of what we know from our customers and also a searching really for things that maybe we weren't as aware of that may actually be on the horizon and developing dynamically as the market expands and as new people come in. You know, are there white spaces out there, some things that either our brands or our portfolio can fill? And so the feedback loops are, you know, really, I think, you know, Kim was really visionary in starting the company by really ingraining that literally from the very top all the way down. It is not a one function responsibility. We like to say, if you see something, say something,
Right, right.
you know, not necessarily, you know, taken from, you know, other contexts, but in the sense of this is all of our company, right? And we want to really put that customer first. And so if anyone in the company sees something that's not quite right or something that, hey, I heard this from a customer, maybe we should consider it, that does bubble up to our operations team, our ops team, as we call it, and then we action against it.
Yeah, it is interesting and a unique sort of proposition for uh, MSOs that have footprints. Is that the right plural of footprint?
Mhm.
Footprints across different states. That not every state is going to be different, and even within a
Mhm.
state, there'll be like microclimates or micro geographies of what consumers need and want. And
Mhm.
even thinking about Florida, where there's suburban environments, and then there's I would say tourist environments, and with different need states, different consumers, different actions of even the team on the ground. It
Mhm.
is an interesting sort of proposition for the companies like yours with that footprint to be able to analyze what's happening, obviously in real time, but then over time with different
Mhm.
consumers, different geographies, even within within the company. It could be different environments in Massachusetts versus Florida versus Arizona, and everybody's you can tailor it to those different consumers.
Yeah, I think climate plays a factor, right? Florida is sort of summertime all year round. But then you also have, I think, those who have a commute, right? There's factors. I lived in New York for many years, and that commute, boy, on the trains, for like an hour plus per day each way, also creates sort of a real consumer dynamic that people consider as they, make choices about what they use, when they do. You also have, a very active community, I would say as well.
Hmm.
One group of consumers, I'm just thinking about folks that are, physically active, not necessarily running marathons per se, but folks who lift. Pain relief is definitely something that we found a lot of people, whether you're a tennis player or you do CrossFit, right? That oftentimes people would be surprised, some would anyway, that cannabis is absolutely a part of their life.
Yeah, and if you follow trends like that, it's like what will be the pickleball gummy in Florida? Like
It's
I've
so funny you say that. My husband played pickleball over the weekend. That's too funny.
It is. It's all the rage. It really is. And I know Florida, it's big down there, and I think in Arizona too. But even in Massachusetts right now, it's just taking over, and it's like
Yeah.
it is this association with that that this active lifestyle and this sort of in between rec and medical that I think is
Mhm.
where a lot of the industry is sort of headed, because that's where consumers already are,
Mhm.
whether they're going to a store because they have a medical card, or whether they go into a dispensary because they want you know cannabis, pre-rolls. Like they are not defining it in their minds one or the other. They are defining it
Absolutely
sort of
not.
somewhere in the
That's right.
middle. And I think that that's important, obviously, from a business perspective. But and this isn't what we want to talk about, but like, is that also important? I think, I guess, from like a regulator perspective, like it's not binary one or the other. It is really, it's more like the those aisles in like Whole Foods and Walgreens and CVS. Like there is a wellness part of this that I think is really important to consider from a business perspective, but also from a regulator perspective.
I think the regulators are people too, right?
Yeah.
Uh, That's what I like
You
to
think?
say.
I don't know.
I
I'm just kidding.
do. I actually do. They were children once and teens once and 20 somethings once. And so, I think we're all learning through the evolution of the industry, right? So I'll go back to our brand Momenta, which is very much about wellness, which is very much akin to, your daily vitamins, your supplements, maybe more purely medicinal. But then, flower is huge. It's still the single largest segment, right? Whether it is in whole, pre-roll, or some other form. And so, from that standpoint, yeah, people, it's not as simple as medical or recreational or
Right.
medical or adult use. We're still learning a lot, I think, about the plant as well. And so for us, we have the cultivar collection because we understand that there is that connoisseur out there who has discriminating tastes, and who understands that when you really put more, almost like craft beer, right?
Hmm.
When you're handling the plant more with your hands, and there's more care that's taken versus machine involvement, let's say, right? That it's worth the premium, let's say. When I think about our edibles brand, Sweet Talk, right? You want some. I talked about that guilty pleasure, right? It's a little cheeky, a little flirty, not too over the top, but of course, it serves a function, a functional benefit. But hey, if you're gonna put something in your mouth to eat, then it might as well taste good too, right? So that's where that you want some. It's like if somebody takes a slice of cake and you're sharing out at the party, and somebody's like, no, I'm like, really? You're at a party? It's a birthday party? Just a little piece. Come on, you want some.
It's also the form, as I understand it,
Yeah,
it's sort of 25
yeah.
milligram pieces, and it's like, I don't know how people are surviving the lockdowns and the recovery from COVID, as a parent at least, without something just like this, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, no, I do. I think, and we did see actually, funny you mentioned that in 2020, right, with COVID, there was absolutely a dynamic. There was what I would call pantry loading when COVID was first announced. I think a lot of people were concerned that they weren't going to be able to get their cannabis, so maybe they bought more than normal to make sure that they had it. And then, of course, when we moved to, for those of us who could remote work or couldn't go to work for a period of time, I think there was also probably a bit of some consumption spike that was included in that as well. So 2020 had a really unique dynamic as we were all, in shock, but dealing with COVID, and then kind of continuing on with life through COVID.
Yeah. Well, Valda, this has been great to talk through sort of the launch of the brands, but also the thinking behind it, the feedback loop you guys have, the footprint of Trulieve. We hope you'll come back and sort of share more about how it's going, but we really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And you know what? I look forward to, in one of our many states, to, hopefully people get to enjoy some of these brands as well.
Well, I'm out. I'm going to head out this afternoon in Massachusetts, so I'll let you know how it goes. Valda, thanks for being here. We'll connect with you down the road.
Thank you so much.
That was Valda Coryat, the Chief Marketing Officer of Trulieve. If you like this program, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you heard the show. It helps support the work we do. We're able to do what we do because of our ongoing partners, including Alterna Savings, Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Gallagher, Headset, and Torque & Mains. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com.